My son humiliated me in front of everyone, then he froze after what my granddaughter said next. Instead, Michael stood up with a face I'd never seen before. Cold. Distant. Like he was looking at a stranger instead of the woman who'd given him everything. Have you ever witnessed a family moment that changed everything? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. The birthday party I had dreamed about for months became the day my own son called me a burden in front of 70 people. I watched 70 faces turn from celebration to horror as he pointed at me and said I had ruined his life. But what happened next would leave him speechless, and change our family forever. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by someone you love most? Have you ever sacrificed everything for your child, only to be told you're nothing but a burden? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family, like your years of love and sacrifice meant absolutely nothing? This is the story of how one grandmother's quiet strength turned a moment of shame into a lesson her family will never forget. Stay with me as I reveal what my granddaughter said that made my grown son cry, and how one birthday party exposed secrets that had been buried for decades. If you've ever felt undervalued by your own family, this story will hit you right in the heart. And if you think you know how family drama ends, trust me, you've never seen anything like this. Let me take you back to that Sunday afternoon in Dallas, Texas. The Fellowship Baptist Church Hall buzzed with excitement. Balloons in every shade of purple, my favorite color, hung from the ceiling. Tables groaned under the weight of my famous peach cobbler, fried chicken, and sweet potato pie. 70 people had come to celebrate my 70th birthday, and I felt like the luckiest woman alive. I had spent 3 weeks planning every detail. Hand-wrote each invitation. Polished my good china until it sparkled. Even bought a new dress, royal blue with tiny pearls around the collar, because I wanted to feel beautiful on my special day. When you've lived through what I've lived through, reaching 70 feels like winning a marathon. My granddaughter Olivia, all 14 years of fierce energy, helped me set up the dessert table. Her dark eyes sparkled with mischief as she snuck a fingerful of frosting from my birthday cake. "Grandma, you look like a queen today," she whispered, adjusting the small tiara she'd insisted I wear. In that moment, with her young hand straightening my crown, I felt desired and cherished, the way I used to feel when her grandfather would steal kisses behind this very church after Sunday service, his rough hands gentle on my face, making me feel like the most beautiful woman in Mississippi. The afternoon started perfectly. Neighbors shared stories about how I'd helped their families through tough times. My old friend Dorothy reminded everyone about the time I organized the church food drive that fed half the neighborhood during the '08 recession. Cousin Marie talked about how I'd taken care of Mama during her final years, never missing a day at her bedside. But Michael sat in the corner, checking his phone, barely acknowledging the praise flowing toward his mother. His wife Jennifer tried to engage him, but he just shrugged and looked annoyed. I caught him rolling his eyes when Mrs. Patterson from down the street called me an angel walking among us. That should have been my warning. When it came time for speeches, I expected maybe a few kind words from my son. After all, I'd raised him alone after his daddy walked out on us. Worked double shifts at the hospital and waited tables at night just to keep him fed and clothed. Sold my wedding ring to pay his college tuition when the scholarship money wasn't enough. Stayed up countless nights helping him with homework, driving him to football practice, cheering louder than any other parent in those bleachers. Instead, Michael stood up with a face I'd never seen before. Cold. Distant. Like he was looking at a stranger instead of the woman who'd given him everything. "I need to say something," he announced, his voice cutting through the happy chatter. The room went quiet. Jennifer's face went pale. Even little Olivia stopped fidgeting and stared at her father. "Everyone's been talking about how wonderful my mother is," Michael continued, his words dripping with something bitter. "But nobody talks about the other side. Nobody talks about what it's like being her son." My heart started racing. This wasn't the speech I'd been hoping for. "She's been a burden on me for years," he said, pointing directly at me like I was some kind of criminal. "Always needing something. Always asking for help. Always making me feel guilty if I don't drop everything for her problems. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. I felt every eye in that room turn toward me, and I wanted to disappear into the floor. I've given her thousands of dollars over the years, Michael continued, his voice getting louder. I've sacrificed my own family's financial security because she can't manage her own life. And instead of being grateful, she just expects more. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of everyone. My hands gripped the edge of my chair so tight my knuckles went white. She guilt-trips me constantly. Makes me feel like a bad son if I don't visit enough, don't call enough, don't give enough. Well, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of carrying the weight of her poor decisions. The silence in that room was deafening. Dorothy's mouth hung open. Cousin Marie looked like she'd seen a ghost. Even the pastor seemed shocked into stillness. But then something beautiful happened. Something that still gives me chills when I think about it. My granddaughter Olivia, sweet, fierce, brilliant Olivia, slowly rose from her seat. Everyone thought she was going to defend her father, maybe try to smooth things over like kids do when adults act foolish. Instead, she turned to face Michael with fire in her young eyes, and the room held its breath. Then Olivia stood up, and the words that came from her mouth made the entire room gasp. Have you ever witnessed a family moment that changed everything? Drop a comment below and tell us about a time when someone surprised you by standing up for what's right. And if you're enjoying this story, hit that like button, because what happens next will absolutely shock you. Olivia didn't just stand up, she transformed. This 14-year-old girl, barely 5 feet tall, suddenly commanded the attention of every adult in that room like she owned the place. Her voice, when she finally spoke, carried a weight that made grown men lean forward. "Daddy," she said, her words crystal clear and steady, "I think you forgot something important while you were talking." Michael's confident expression flickered. "Olivia, sit down. This is between adults." "No," she replied, crossing her arms. "This is about family. And I'm part of this family too." The room stayed frozen. You could hear the air conditioning humming in the background, but nobody moved. Nobody breathed. "You said Grandma asks you for money all the time," Olivia continued, her young voice carrying across the silent hall. "But you forgot to mention why she asks." Michael's face started changing color. "Olivia, that's enough. You forgot to tell everyone about the $3,000 you borrowed from her last Christmas when your mortgage was behind," Olivia said, her words landing like bombs in the quiet room. "You forgot to mention the $5,000 she gave you when Emma needed those dental braces." Jennifer's head snapped toward her husband so fast I thought she might get whiplash. Her face went from confusion to something much darker. "You forgot about the $800 for car repairs last month," Olivia pressed on, gaining momentum. "And the $2,000 she loaned you for Emma's school trip to Washington." Each number hit Michael like a physical blow. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked like a fish drowning in air. "But most importantly, Daddy," Olivia said, her voice growing stronger, "you forgot to mention that every single time you asked Grandma for money, you promised you'd pay her back. And you never did. Not once." The gasps around the room were audible now. Mrs. Patterson actually stood up to get a better look at Michael's face. Dorothy shook her head in disgust. Even the pastor looked disappointed. But Olivia wasn't finished. "You want to know what Grandma told me last week when I asked her why she looked so tired?" Olivia's voice cracked slightly, but she pushed through. "She said she's been working extra shifts at the grocery store, at 70 years old, because she needed money for her heart medication. The medication she couldn't afford because she gave her savings to you." That's when Jennifer shot to her feet. "Michael, what is she talking about?" The look on Michael's face told everyone exactly what Olivia was talking about. Guilt. Pure, undeniable guilt. "And you want to know the really crazy part?" Olivia continued, turning to address the whole room now. "Grandma never told any of us about the money. She never complained. she never made Daddy feel bad about it. She just gave and gave and gave, because that's what grandmothers do. I felt something stirring inside me that I hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not just in Olivia's courage, but in myself. This beautiful, intelligent girl saw my worth when my own son couldn't. I remembered feeling this powerful once before, when I was young and bold, when I'd marched into that principal's office to fight for Michael's right to be in advanced classes, when I'd felt beautiful and strong and unafraid. So when you call her a burden, Olivia said, her voice rising to fill every corner of that hall, you're calling the woman who sacrificed her own health for your comfort a burden. You're calling the woman who raised you alone while working 2 jobs a burden. You're calling the woman who gave you everything she had a burden. Michael finally found his voice. Olivia, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, she shot back. I understand that you're embarrassed of where you came from. I understand that you think Grandma's house isn't nice enough for your friends. I understand that you make excuses when she wants to visit because you're ashamed of her. The room erupted in whispers. People were shaking their heads, some wiping away tears. I saw anger in faces that had been smiling just minutes before. But here's what you don't understand, Daddy, Olivia said, her voice dropping to something deadly quiet. Grandma knows. She knows you're ashamed of her. She knows you think she's not good enough for your new life. And she loves you anyway. She keeps giving anyway. She keeps sacrificing anyway. Jennifer was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. Michael, is this true? But Olivia wasn't finished. She had one more secret to reveal that would destroy Michael's carefully built image forever. Tell them about the voicemails, Daddy, Olivia said, pulling out her phone. Tell them about the messages you leave when you need money. Tell them how your voice changes when you want something. Michael's face went white as snow. Olivia, put that away. Should I play the one from last month? She asked sweetly. The one where you called her the best mother in the world and promised this would be the last time? Or should I play the one from 2 weeks ago where you said the exact same thing? The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop on carpet. What would you do if a teenager had to defend you from your own child? Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts. And if you're shocked by what's happening in this family, hit that like button because Olivia isn't done revealing secrets yet. Michael stood there looking like a man watching his whole world crumble. His carefully crafted image of the successful son, the devoted father, the responsible adult, all of it was falling apart in front of 70 witnesses. Olivia, please, he whispered, but his daughter's eyes held no mercy. Play it, someone called from the back of the room. I think it was Dorothy, but I couldn't be sure because my heart was pounding so loud in my ears. Olivia's finger hovered over her phone screen. This is from 3 weeks ago, she announced to the room. Listen to how he talks to Grandma when he needs something. Michael's voice filled the church hall, tinny through the phone speaker but clear enough for everyone to hear. Hey Mama, it's your favorite son. Listen, I hate to ask, but we're in a tight spot this month. Jennifer doesn't know, and I'd appreciate if you could keep it between us. Just 2,000 this time, I promise. You know I'm good for it. You raised me right, and I love you more than anything in this world. The contrast between that sweet voice on the recording and the cruel man who just called me a burden was so sharp it cut like a knife. People started murmuring, shaking their heads. That's not even the best one, Olivia said, swiping to another message. Here's what he said 2 days after Grandma's doctor told her she needed that heart medication. Another recording, Mama, I know the timing isn't great, but the mortgage company called today. If you could help us out this one last time, I'll make sure to pay you back as soon as my bonus comes through. You've always been there for me, and I need you now more than ever. Jennifer stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. Michael, what the hell is wrong with you? But I was watching my granddaughter, this fierce little warrior who'd kept my secrets and protected my dignity when I couldn't protect myself. She reminded me of myself at that age, before life taught me to be smaller, quieter, more grateful for whatever scraps of love came my way. Watching her stand up for me made me feel something I hadn't felt in years, beautiful, powerful, worth fighting for. There are 17 more messages just like these, Olivia continued, holding up her phone. 17 times in the past 6 months that Daddy called Grandma begging for money. And every single time, he promised it would be the last time. Michael finally found his voice. That's private family business. So was calling Grandma a burden, Olivia shot back. But you made that public, didn't you? The crowd was getting restless now. I could see anger building in faces that had been shocked into silence just moments before. Mrs. Henderson, who'd known me since I first moved to Dallas, stood up and glared at Michael like he'd personally insulted her. You mean to tell me, Mrs. Henderson said, her voice shaking with rage, that this woman has been supporting your grown behind while you stand here calling her a burden? It's complicated, Michael started. Ain't nothing complicated about respect, called out Mr. Thompson from the third row. That woman raised you right, and this is how you repay her. But Olivia held up her hand for silence. She wasn't done destroying her father's reputation. Want to know the really crazy part? She asked the room. Every time Daddy borrowed money from Grandma, he told her not to mention it to anyone. Said it would embarrass him if people knew he needed help. The irony hit the room like a wave. Here was Michael, embarrassed about needing financial help, but perfectly willing to humiliate the woman who'd been helping him. So while Grandma was working extra shifts at the grocery store to afford her medication, Olivia continued, Daddy was telling his friends that he was doing so while he might buy a bigger house. Jennifer sank back into her chair, her face buried in her hands. Oh my God, Michael. Oh my God. And here's the part that really made me mad, Olivia said, her young voice carrying the wisdom of someone much older. Last month, when Grandma asked if we could have Sunday dinner at our house because she was too tired to cook, Daddy told her our schedule was too busy. But that same weekend, he had his poker buddies over for a barbecue that lasted until midnight. The temperature in that room felt like it dropped 20 degrees. People were looking at Michael like he'd committed a crime. And maybe he had, the crime of forgetting where he came from. But I could see something else happening. Olivia was protecting me, fighting for me, in a way that made me feel desirable and worthy again. Not just as a grandmother or a mother, but as a woman who deserved respect and love. Grandma never told me any of this directly, Olivia said, her voice softening slightly. I figured it out by listening. By watching. By seeing how tired she got after Daddy's visits. By noticing how she'd count money in her purse when she thought nobody was looking. Michael's hands were shaking now. He kept opening his mouth like he wanted to defend himself, but what defense could there be? Then I reached into my purse and pulled out something that made Michael's face turn white with terror. Have you ever discovered that someone was lying about you behind your back? How did you handle it? Comment below and let us know. And if this family drama is keeping you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button because the evidence I'm about to reveal will blow your mind. The manila envelope in my hands felt heavier than it should have. Inside were bank statements, copies of text messages, and loan documents that told a story Michael never wanted anyone to hear. I'd been keeping records for months, not because I planned to expose him, but because my memory wasn't what it used to be and I needed to track where my money was going. What's that, Mama? Michael asked, but his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. He sounded like a little boy caught stealing cookies. I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately. The first document was a bank statement showing 17 different transfers to Michael's account over 6 months. Each one had a memo: help for Michael, car repair, help for Michael, mortgage, help for Michael, emergency. This shows every penny I've given you since January, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. $14,300. The number hung in the air like smoke. People started doing math in their heads, whispering to each other. $14,000 was more than some folks in that room made in 6 months. Jennifer's face went through about 5 different emotions before settling on something between rage and heartbreak. 14,000, she whispered. Michael, you told me your mother never helped us financially. But I wasn't done. The next document was even more damaging. This is a letter from my doctor, I continued, holding up the white paper that had changed everything for me. It says I need a minor heart procedure that costs $3,000. Insurance covers most of it, but I need to pay $800 up front. I looked directly at Michael, whose face had gone from white to green. I've been putting off this procedure for 2 months because I gave that money to you instead. The gasp that went through the room was collective and sharp. Mrs. Patterson actually clutched her chest like she was having her own heart problem. You mean, Jennifer said slowly, you've been risking your health to help us? Not just helping, I corrected. Enabling. There's a difference. I pulled out the next piece of evidence, a series of text messages I'd printed from my phone. Modern technology isn't my strong suit, but Olivia had helped me figure out how to save and print our conversations. These are messages from Michael over the past month, I announced. Would you like me to read them out loud, or would you prefer to tell everyone yourself what you wrote? Michael's mouth moved but no sound came out. He looked like he was suffocating on his own shame. So I read them myself. Message from April 15th, Mama, I know I just asked last week, but could you spot me $500? The electric company is threatening to shut us off. Jennifer doesn't know how behind we are, and I'm trying to protect her from the stress. Jennifer stood up again, this time with fury in her eyes. The electric bill was never behind, Michael. I pay all the utilities. Message from April 22nd, I continued, emergency, Mama. Emma needs new school clothes for her field trip, and we're tapped out. Could you transfer $300 by tomorrow? I'll explain everything later. Emma got those clothes from Target with my credit card, Jennifer said, her voice getting higher. What $300? But the worst was yet to come. I pulled out the final document, a promissory note that Michael had written and signed 6 months ago. This is a legal document that Michael wrote in his own handwriting, I said, holding it up for everyone to see. It says he would pay me back the money he borrowed by Christmas. It's signed and dated. Mr. Franklin, who worked at the bank, squinted at the paper from his seat. That's a real promissory note, he called out. That's legally binding. Christmas was 4 months ago, I said simply. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't shock anymore, this was anger. Real, righteous anger from people who understood what financial abuse looked like. But then something happened that I hadn't expected. Dorothy, my friend of 30 years, stood up and walked over to me. She put her weathered hand on my shoulder, and I felt a warmth that reminded me of being young and supported, of having girlfriends who saw my beauty and my strength. Helen, she said loud enough for everyone to hear, how long has this been going on? Too long, I admitted. Years. And you never said anything? He's my son, I said simply. What was I supposed to do? That's when Jennifer completely lost it. She spun around to face her husband, and I'd never seen a woman look so beautiful in her anger. Her face was flushed, her eyes blazing, and there was something magnificent about watching her claim her power. Michael Robert Johnson, she said, using his full name like his mother used to when he was in trouble, you have been lying to me for months. Months. Jennifer, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been stealing from your mother while telling me we couldn't afford to help her? That you've been making me look like a selfish daughter-in-law when I wanted to invite her for dinner? The pieces were falling into place for Jennifer, and watching her put it all together was like watching someone solve a puzzle in real time. But before Michael could answer, Jennifer whispered something in my ear that changed everything again. Is there a point where love isn't enough to forgive someone? What's your boundary? Let us know in the comments. And if you're as shocked as this church congregation was, hit that subscribe button because what Jennifer revealed next will make you question everything you thought you knew about this family. Jennifer leaned down close to my ear, her breath warm against my cheek, and whispered words that made my heart skip. Mrs. Helen, I've been putting money in a savings account for you. Michael doesn't know. I've been saving $50 every week since Christmas because I knew something wasn't right. I stared at her in complete shock. This beautiful young woman, who I'd always thought barely tolerated me, had been secretly looking out for my welfare. She squeezed my hand and stood back up, facing the crowd with a strength that reminded me of my own younger self, fierce, protective, unafraid to fight for what's right. "I need to tell everyone something," Jennifer announced, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "Michael has been lying to me too." Michael tried to interrupt. "Jennifer, please don't." "Don't what?" she snapped. "Don't tell the truth? Don't defend the woman who raised the man I married? Don't stand up for what's right?" She turned to face the crowd, and I could see the decision forming in her real time. This was her moment to choose sides, and she was choosing mine. "For months, Michael has been telling me that his mother never helped our family," Jennifer continued. "He said she was too proud to offer assistance. He said she wanted us to struggle on our own to teach us responsibility." The crowd murmured their disapproval. These were people who knew me, who understood my character, and they knew that story didn't sound like something I'd do. Meanwhile, Jennifer pressed on. "I've been feeling guilty every week because I wanted to invite Mrs. Helen for dinner, wanted to take her shopping, wanted to include her in our family activities. But Michael always had an excuse. She's too tired. She's too busy. She wouldn't enjoy it." I felt tears forming in my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of gratitude. This woman, who I'd barely gotten to know because of my son's barriers, had been thinking about me, caring about me, wanting to include me. "Last month," Jennifer continued, "when I suggested we take Mrs. Helen out for her birthday dinner before this party, Michael told me it would be too expensive. He said we couldn't afford to pay for an extra person at a restaurant." She paused, letting that sink in before delivering the knockout punch. "But apparently, we could afford for him to ask his 70-year-old mother for $2,000 that same week." The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. People started talking over each other, expressing their outrage. I heard words like disgusting and shameful and ungrateful. But Jennifer wasn't finished revealing her secrets. "I want everyone to know," she said, her voice growing stronger, "that I've been keeping track too. Not because I suspected anything at first, but because our family budget never seemed to add up right." She pulled out her own phone and began reading from her notes. "In the past 6 months, Michael told me we couldn't afford new curtains for the living room, a weekend trip to visit my sister, Emma's art class, and a new washing machine when ours broke." Each item on the list made Michael look smaller and more pathetic. But during those same 6 months, according to what we just learned, he found money to ask his mother for over $14,000. The math was brutal and clear. Michael had been choosing to ask his elderly mother for money rather than make sacrifices in his own household. "And here's the part that really breaks my heart," Jennifer said, her voice cracking with emotion. "Mrs. Helen has been working extra shifts at 70 years old while my husband told me we couldn't afford to help her with her groceries. I watched my daughter-in-law transform before my eyes. She was claiming her power, refusing to be complicit in her husband's treatment of me. There was something deeply attractive about her strength, the way she refused to be diminished by association with Michael's behavior. I've been secretly visiting Mrs. Helen on Saturdays," Jennifer announced, causing another wave of gasps. "Taking her grocery shopping, helping her with doctor's appointments, spending time with her because I wanted to know my daughter's grandmother." Olivia beamed with pride. "I helped plan those visits," she added. "We've been taking care of Grandma together." The alliance between these two generations of women, working around Michael's selfishness to create their own relationship, was beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. "Every Saturday for 3 months," Jennifer continued, "Mrs. Helen and I have been building a friendship that my husband tried to prevent. And every Saturday, I've seen how tired she looks, how worried she gets when bills come in the mail, how she counts her money twice before buying anything." Michael finally exploded. "You went behind my back. You've been sneaking around with my mother? The way you've been sneaking around asking her for money?" Jennifer fired back. "The way you've been lying to both of us about our financial situation? That's different." "No, Michael. What's different is that we were building love while you were building lies." I felt a warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the crowded room. These women, my granddaughter and my daughter-in-law, had been protecting me, caring for me, seeing my worth when my own son couldn't. But what Jennifer showed me next proved that Michael's betrayal went deeper than any of us imagined. Have you ever had to choose between supporting someone and loyalty to your spouse? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. And if you're loving how these women are standing up for what's right, hit that like button because Jennifer's about to reveal something that will change this whole story. The man who walked through those church doors was someone I never thought I'd see again. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a navy suit that fit him like it was made for his body. After 47 years, James Patterson still knew how to make an entrance. Every head in that room turned toward him, but his eyes found mine immediately. The same green eyes that used to make my heart race when we were young, before life got complicated, before I made the choice that sent him away forever. James? I whispered, my voice barely audible. But he wasn't looking at me the way he used to. There was something different in his expression, determination mixed with sadness. He walked down the center aisle like he was walking to the altar, and every step echoed in the dead silence. "Excuse me," James said, his voice still carrying that Arkansas drawl that used to make me weak in the knees. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing from outside." Michael's mouth fell open. "Who the hell are you?" Jennifer grabbed her husband's arm. "Michael, don't be rude." But James ignored Michael completely. He walked straight to me, stopping just close enough that I could smell his cologne. The same woodsy scent he'd worn when we were young and foolish and thought love could conquer anything. "Hello, Helen," he said softly. "You look beautiful." I felt heat rise in my cheeks like I was 17 again. 47 years melted away in an instant, and I remembered what it felt like to be desired, to be seen as more than just a mother or a grandmother. "James, what are you doing here?" I managed to ask. "I've been living in Dallas for 3 years," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "I've been wanting to reach out, but I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me." The room was buzzing with whispers now. People were trying to figure out who this man was and why his presence seemed to change the entire atmosphere. "I was driving past when I saw all the cars," James continued. "Figured something big was happening. When I heard the shouting from the parking lot, I had to make sure you were okay." That's when it hit me, James had heard Michael calling me a burden. This man from my past, the one who'd once made me feel like the most precious thing in the world, had witnessed my public humiliation. "You heard?" I asked, embarrassment flooding through me. "I heard enough," James said, his voice hardening as he finally looked at Michael. "I heard a man disrespecting the finest woman I've ever known." Michael puffed up like a rooster. "Look, I don't know who you are, but this is family business." "You're right," James said calmly. "You don't know who I am." He turned back to me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my pulse quicken. A secret. A truth that would change everything. "Helen," James said gently, "I think it's time you told your son about his father." The words hit the room like lightning. Michael's face went from red to pale in the space of a heartbeat. Jennifer's grip on his arm tightened. Even Olivia, who'd been so brave and fierce just minutes before, looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Michael demanded, but his voice had lost all its power. I looked at James, then at my son, then at the 70 faces staring back at me. Some secrets are meant to stay buried. But sometimes, when someone tries to diminish you in front of the people you love, the truth becomes the only weapon you have left. "Michael," I said slowly, "meet James Patterson. Your biological father." The silence that followed was so complete it felt like the world had stopped turning. Michael's mouth opened and closed like he was drowning. Jennifer's face went white. Olivia looked like she'd been struck by lightning. But James stepped forward, his presence commanding and sure. Even at 67, he carried himself like a man who'd never apologized for taking up space in the world. "Son," James said, and the word hung in the air heavy with 47 years of absence. "I've been watching your life from a distance. Watching you succeed, watching you build a family, watching you become the man your mother raised you to be." Michael couldn't speak. He just stared at this stranger who claimed to be his father. But I never expected to watch you treat the woman who sacrificed everything for you like she was nothing, James continued, his voice carrying disappointment that cut deeper than anger. I felt a complex mix of emotions watching these two men, the son I'd raised alone and the man I'd loved and lost, finally face each other. There was something electric about having James here, defending me, seeing my worth in a way that made me feel beautiful and valuable again. You left, Michael finally managed to whisper. You abandoned us. Yes, James said simply. I did. And that was the biggest mistake of my life. When they spoke, their words revealed a family secret that no one in that room was prepared to hear. Have you ever had someone from your past appear at the perfect moment? Tell us about it in the comments. And if you're shocked by this family revelation, hit that subscribe button because what James is about to reveal about why he left will change everything you thought you knew about this story. James looked around the room, taking in all the faces staring back at him, before his eyes settled on Michael again. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of regret. I didn't leave because I didn't love you, James said to Michael. I left because I was a coward. The simplicity of his confession hit harder than any dramatic explanation could have. Your mother was 19 when she got pregnant with you, James continued. I was 22 and scared out of my mind. Not because of you, because of what people would say about us. I felt my cheeks burning. These were details I'd never shared with anyone, not even my closest friends. But James was laying our history bare in front of everyone. Helen was the most beautiful, intelligent, strong woman I'd ever met, James said, and despite everything, I felt a flutter of attraction hearing him say those words. She was studying to be a nurse. Had dreams bigger than Arkansas could hold. He turned to me, and for a moment it was like we were the only two people in the room. When you told me you were pregnant, I panicked. Not because I didn't want a family with you, but because I was afraid of what my family would say. What your family would say. What everyone would say. The room was hanging on every word. This wasn't just family drama anymore, this was a love story with real consequences. So I ran, James admitted, his voice breaking slightly. I convinced myself that you'd be better off without me. That you deserved someone braver, someone who wouldn't care what other people thought. Michael's face was a mixture of confusion and pain. But you never came back. Never called. Never even sent money. Because I was ashamed, James said simply. Every year that passed made it harder to face what I'd done. How do you apologize for missing someone's entire childhood? How do you explain 47 years of absence? Jennifer was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. Even some of the older church members were wiping their eyes. I moved to California, got married, had other children, James continued. But I never stopped thinking about you both. Never stopped wondering what kind of man you'd become, Helen. Never stopped regretting the biggest mistake of my life. I felt a complex mix of emotions listening to this confession. Anger for all the years of struggle. Pain for all the times Michael had asked about his father and I'd had no answers. But also something else, something that reminded me of the passionate young woman I used to be. When my wife passed away 5 years ago, James said, I finally had the courage to hire a private investigator. I've been keeping track of your lives from a distance. Michael's eyes widened. You've been watching us? I've been watching over you, James corrected. Making sure you were okay. Making sure Helen was okay. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. I know about the college tuition your mother paid, James said to Michael. I know about the night shifts she worked to keep you in football. I know about every sacrifice she made because I've been documenting it. The envelope looked official, important. Michael stared at it like it might explode. This contains bank records showing every major expense in your life that your mother covered, James explained. School supplies, clothes, food, rent for your first apartment, the down payment. But what Jennifer showed me next proved that Michael's betrayal went deeper than any of us imagined. She pulled out her phone and showed me screenshots, bank statements, text messages, loan applications. My hands trembled as I scrolled through them. Michael hadn't just been asking me for money. He'd been lying to Jennifer about where their money was going. "Look at this," Jennifer whispered, pointing to a text from 3 months ago. Michael had told her they couldn't afford Olivia's dance classes because of unexpected medical bills. That same week, he'd called me crying about needing $500 for groceries. The room was still buzzing with conversations, but I felt like I was underwater. Everything sounded muffled and distant. "He told me you were demanding money from us," Jennifer continued, her voice shaking. "He said you threatened to cut him out of your will if we didn't help you pay your bills." My mouth fell open. "Child, I've never asked that boy for a dime in my life." That's when Mr. Peterson, who'd been quietly listening from the next table, cleared his throat. He'd always been a handsome man, even at 75, with those silver curls and kind eyes that seemed to see right through you. When he looked at me now, I felt that old flutter in my stomach, the same feeling I'd had when he first moved in across the street 2 years ago. "Ma'am," he said, standing up slowly. "I think there's something everyone needs to know." The conversations around us started dying down. Mr. Peterson had been a banker for 40 years before retirement. When he spoke about money matters, people listened. "I've been doing Martha's taxes for the past 2 years, he announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "That woman has never missed a bill payment in her life. She owns her house outright, has savings, and a pension that covers all her expenses." More heads turned our way. I felt exposed but also strangely powerful. There was something thrilling about being defended by this distinguished man who made my pulse quicken whenever he smiled at me. "In fact," Mr. Peterson continued, walking closer to our table, "she's been putting money into a college fund for her granddaughter every month. $500, regular as clockwork." Olivia gasped. "Grandma, is that true?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Mr. Peterson's hand found my shoulder, warm and steady. The touch sent electricity through me that I hadn't felt in years. "Your grandmother," he said to Olivia, "is one of the most financially responsible people I know. She's been planning for your future while her own son was lying about her." Michael's face had gone from red to white to red again. People were staring now, whispering behind their hands. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how to salvage this situation. "That's not, she did ask for." "Boy, stop talking," James interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a whip. "Every word out your mouth just making it worse." Jennifer was scrolling through more screenshots on her phone. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Michael, you told me last month that your mother was asking us to pay her electric bill." She showed me the text conversation. There it was, in black and white. Michael telling his wife that I was struggling, that I was too proud to ask directly, that they needed to help me before I lost my house. I started, but Mr. Peterson squeezed my shoulder gently. "Let them see it all," he said quietly. "The truth needs light." Jennifer kept reading from her phone, her voice getting stronger with each lie she discovered. "He said you asked him to co-sign a loan. He said you wanted us to pay for your medicine. He said, oh God, Michael, you told me she was threatening suicide if we didn't help her." The gasp that went up from the nearby tables made my skin crawl. How could my own child tell such horrible lies about me? But then I noticed something else. The way people were looking at me wasn't pity anymore. It was respect. Admiration, even. Mrs. Washington from down the street was nodding approvingly. Deacon Johnson was shaking his head at Michael with disgust. And Mr. Peterson, the way he was looking at me made me feel beautiful. Desirable. Like I was worth defending. "What I want to know," called out Mrs. Rodriguez from table 6, "is where that money really went if it wasn't to help Miss Martha." Michael opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Jennifer was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. "The gambling," Olivia said quietly. "That's where it went, wasn't it, Dad?" The silence that followed was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that church hall. "Olivia, don't." He's been going to that casino in Louisiana, she continued, her young voice carrying clearly across the room. I found the receipts in his car. My heart stopped. Gambling. All those late nights he claimed he was working overtime. All those family dinners he missed. All those lies about needing money for emergencies. Mr. Peterson's hand tightened on my shoulder, and I could feel his anger radiating through his touch. It made me feel protected in a way I hadn't experienced since my husband died. Son, James said, his voice deadly quiet, you got about 10 seconds to start telling the truth before this gets real ugly, real fast. Michael looked around the room, at his wife's disgusted face, at his daughter's disappointed eyes, at the community members who were now seeing him clearly for the first time. But I was done waiting for his explanations. Have you ever discovered that someone close to you was using your name to manipulate others? What would you do if you found out family members were lying about you to cover their own mistakes? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if you think this story is getting intense, just wait until you see what happens when the police officer in the crowd decides to step forward. When Officer Martinez stood up from table 12, the entire room went quiet. I'd known Rosa Martinez since she was Olivia's age, running around this same church hall during community events. Now she was 35, in uniform, and walking toward our table with the kind of serious expression that made everyone nervous. Mrs. Jenkins, she said respectfully, I'm sorry to interrupt your birthday celebration, but I couldn't help overhearing the conversation. Michael's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Jennifer grabbed Olivia's hand. Mr. Peterson moved slightly closer to me, his presence warm and reassuring. What I'm hearing, Officer Martinez continued, sounds like it could be elder financial abuse. That's a serious crime in Texas. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elder financial abuse. I'd heard the term before, seen those commercials on TV, but never imagined it could apply to my own situation. Now hold on, Michael finally found his voice. This is just a family misunderstanding. We don't need to involve. Son, Officer Martinez interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. When someone uses lies about an elderly person to obtain money from third parties, that's fraud. When someone exploits an elderly person's reputation for financial gain, that's abuse. These aren't family misunderstandings. These are crimes. My chest felt tight, but not from fear. From power. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like someone was truly seeing what had been happening to me. Mr. Peterson leaned down slightly. Are you okay with this, Martha? He whispered near my ear. His breath was warm against my neck, sending shivers down my spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with feeling desired, protected, wanted. I nodded. I'm more than okay. Officer Martinez pulled out a small notebook. Mrs. Jenkins, have you given your son any money in the past year? Not 1 cent, I said clearly. In fact, I've been putting money away for my granddaughter's college fund every month. And have you ever asked your son or his family for financial help? Never. I pay my own bills, own my house, and have savings. She wrote quickly, then looked at Jennifer. Mrs. Jenkins, can you show me those text messages you mentioned? Jennifer hesitated, glancing at Michael. Is this really necessary? I mean, he's my husband. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said gently, fraud is fraud, regardless of family relationships. Your husband used false claims about his mother to obtain money from you under false pretenses. That affects you too. I watched Jennifer's face change as the reality sank in. She'd been working extra shifts at the hospital, picking up overtime to help with what she thought were my emergencies. She'd been stressed, tired, worried about me, all because of Michael's lies. Show her, Jennifer said quietly, handing over her phone. As Officer Martinez scrolled through the messages, her expression grew more serious. Mrs. Jenkins, these messages show a pattern going back over a year. According to this, your husband claimed your mother-in-law was facing eviction, couldn't afford medication, needed help with utilities, and was threatening self-harm. Each lie hit like a slap. I'd been living my quiet, dignified life while my own son was painting me as desperate and unstable. Is any of that true? Officer Martinez asked me. None of it. My voice was steadier than I felt. I've never been late on rent because I don't pay rent. I own my house. My insurance covers my medication. My utility bills are paid automatically from my account. Mr. Peterson's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. The touch was intimate, supportive, and made me feel like I was worth fighting for. And the threats of self-harm? Officer Martinez asked gently. I would never. I love my life. I'm active in church, I volunteer at the food bank, I babysit for neighbors. I have too much to live for. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the nearby tables. These people knew me. They'd seen me living my life, contributing to our community, being strong and independent. Officer, called out Mrs. Washington, that woman organized the whole charity drive for the Thompson family when their house burned down. She don't need anybody's help, she's the one doing the helping. More voices joined in. People sharing stories of my volunteer work, my contributions to church functions, my help with their own families. I felt myself sitting straighter, feeling more attractive and powerful with each testimony. Officer Martinez looked at Michael. Sir, I need to ask you directly. Did you obtain money from your wife by making false claims about your mother's financial situation? Michael's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It's complicated. I was stressed, Anne. It's a yes or no question, sir. The pause stretched so long I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. Finally, barely above a whisper, Michael said, yes. The admission sent shockwaves through the room. Jennifer gasped. Olivia covered her face with her hands. Several people shook their heads in disgust. How much money, total? Officer Martinez asked. I don't know exactly. Maybe $8,000 over the last year? Jennifer's face went white. $8,000? Michael, that's why we couldn't take our vacation. That's why I'd been working double shifts. That's why we told Olivia she couldn't do dance camp this summer. The pain in her voice cut deep. Michael hadn't just hurt me, he'd hurt his own family with his lies. Officer Martinez closed her notebook. Mrs. Jenkins, you have options here. What your son did constitutes elder financial abuse and fraud. You can press charges if you choose to. The room was dead silent. Everyone was looking at me, waiting to see what I would do. Michael was sweating, Jennifer was crying quietly, and Olivia looked like her world was crashing down. But I felt strangely calm. Strangely powerful. Like the beautiful, strong woman I'd always been was finally being recognized. What would you do if you discovered your own child had been committing crimes using your name? Should family loyalty protect someone from facing the consequences of fraud? I need to know what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story is making your heart race, hit that subscribe button because what I decide to do next will shock everyone in that room. I looked around that church hall, at the faces of my friends and neighbors, at my broken son, at my devastated daughter-in-law, at my granddaughter whose childhood innocence was dissolving before my eyes. Officer Martinez waited patiently, her pen poised over her notebook. This was the moment that would define the rest of our family story. Officer Martinez, I said slowly, feeling every eye in the room on me, I need to ask you something first. Yes, ma'am. If I don't press charges, does that mean Michael gets away with this? Does it mean Jennifer doesn't get her money back? She considered carefully. Not necessarily. There are civil options, ways to recover the money without criminal charges. But without consequences, there's nothing stopping this behavior from continuing. I felt Mr. Peterson's thumb stroke across my knuckles, a gentle reminder that I wasn't alone in this decision. The touch sent warmth up my arm and made me feel desirable, supported, beautiful in my strength. I thought about my late husband, Robert. He'd been a man of principles. Actions have consequences, he used to say. Love don't mean letting people walk all over you. I thought about my younger self, that girl who'd worked 2 jobs to put Michael through college, who'd fought tooth and nail for everything we had. She wouldn't have tolerated this disrespect. I thought about Olivia, watching everything, learning what it means to be a woman, to stand up for yourself, to demand respect. And I thought about myself, 70 years old, still strong, still vital, still deserving of dignity. Michael, I said, turning to face my son directly. Look at me. He raised his head reluctantly, tears streaming down his cheeks. Do you remember when you were 12, and you stole money from my purse to buy those expensive sneakers? He nodded miserably. What did I do? You made me return them. And do chores for Mr. Davis to earn the money back. And what did I tell you? His voice was barely a whisper. That loving someone doesn't mean letting them get away with wrong. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. I stood up slowly, feeling every year of my age but also every ounce of my power. Mr. Peterson stood with me, his hand on the small of my back, protective, admiring, making me feel like the attractive, formidable woman I'd always been. Officer Martinez, I said clearly, I want to press charges. The sound that went up from the room was like a wave crashing. Some people gasped, others murmured approval, a few whispered among themselves. Mama, no. Michael jumped to his feet. Please, think about what this will do to the family. I am thinking about family, I replied, my voice strong and steady. I'm thinking about Jennifer, who's been working herself to death because of your lies. I'm thinking about Olivia, who needs to see that actions have consequences. I'm thinking about myself, and how I deserve to be treated with respect. Jennifer was crying harder now, but she was also nodding. She's right, Michael. She's absolutely right. And I'm thinking, I continued, about all the other elderly people whose children might be doing the same thing to them. Maybe if you face real consequences, it'll stop someone else from going through this. Officer Martinez was writing again. Mrs. Jenkins, I'll need you to come to the station this week to file a formal complaint. I'll be there Monday morning. Michael sank back into his chair like all the air had gone out of him. Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The gambling got out of control, and I panicked, and... Sorry doesn't pay Jennifer back her $8,000, I interrupted. Sorry doesn't repair the damage you've done to your family's trust. I felt magnificent. Powerful. Like the sensual, strong woman I'd been in my 30s and 40s, the one who could command a room and make men take notice. Mr. Peterson was looking at me with such admiration that I felt heat bloom in my cheeks. But, I said, and the room held its breath, I'm not heartless. I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope I'd prepared weeks ago. I was going to give this to you at the end of the party. It's a check for $10,000, money I've been saving to help you and Jennifer buy that bigger house you've been wanting. Michael's eyes widened. Jennifer covered her mouth. Now this money is going to pay Jennifer back what you stole from your family, with interest. And the rest is going into Olivia's college fund, where it belongs. I handed the envelope to Jennifer. This doesn't change my decision about pressing charges. You committed crimes, Michael. But it does mean your family won't suffer financially while you figure out how to make this right. The room erupted in applause. People were standing, clapping, wiping their eyes. I felt like a queen receiving the tribute I'd always deserved. Mr. Peterson leaned close to my ear. You are the most incredible woman I've ever known, he whispered, and the desire in his voice made me feel 20 years younger. Olivia jumped up and threw her arms around me. Grandma, I'm so proud of you. Baby girl, I said, holding her tight, never let anyone treat you with disrespect, no matter how much you love them. You hear me? I hear you. Officer Martinez finished writing and closed her notebook. Mrs. Jenkins, I have to say, in 15 years of police work, I've never seen anyone handle a situation with such grace and strength. As people began to come over to congratulate me, to shake my hand, to tell me how proud they were, I caught Michael's eye one more time. Son, I said quietly, I love you. I will always love you. But love doesn't mean being a doormat. I hope someday you understand that what I'm doing today is the most loving thing I can do, for you, for your family, and for me. Do you think I made the right choice? Is it possible to love someone and still hold them accountable for their actions? Share your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear from you. And if you're wondering how this all turns out, make sure you're subscribed because what happens 6 months later will blow your mind. 6 months later, when Michael knocked on my door with something in his hands, I realized our story was far from over. I'd been having a good morning. Mr. Peterson had stopped by earlier to help me plant new flowers in my front garden. We'd been spending a lot more time together since the birthday party, and I wasn't complaining one bit. At 70, I was discovering that companionship could still be exciting, still make your pulse quicken when strong hands brushed against yours while reaching for the same gardening tool. The legal proceedings had been difficult but necessary. Michael had pleaded guilty to elder financial abuse and fraud. He'd received probation, community service, and was required to attend gambling addiction counseling. More importantly, he'd been ordered to make full restitution, not just to Jennifer, but to me for the damage to my reputation and emotional distress. Jennifer had filed for separation initially, but they'd been going to counseling. Olivia was spending most weekends with me, which had become the highlight of my weeks. When I opened the door that Tuesday morning, Michael looked different. Thinner, but somehow healthier. His eyes were clear in a way they hadn't been for years. "Hi, Mama," he said quietly. "Can we talk?" I'd been expecting this day. His probation officer had called last week to tell me that Michael had completed his community service ahead of schedule and was doing well in his gambling addiction program. "Come in, son." He sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd had countless conversations about his dreams and fears. The envelope he'd brought was thick and official-looking. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," he began. "Michael, you're my child. I might not like your choices, but I never stopped wanting to hear from you." He looked surprised, like he'd expected more coldness. "I brought you something." He slid the envelope across the table. "It's not enough, but it's a start." Inside was a check for $15,000 and a letter from a law firm. My eyes widened as I read. "You sued the casino?" "With my lawyer's help, yes." Turns out they were serving alcohol to gamblers without proper monitoring, and they had some violations with their responsible gambling programs. It took 6 months, but we settled. I looked at the check again. "This is more than you ever took. The rest is for pain and suffering, Mama. And interest. And..." He paused, his voice cracking, "and for all the birthdays and holidays I ruined with my selfishness." I set the papers down and really looked at my son. There was something different in his face, a humility that hadn't been there before, but also a strength I hadn't seen since he was a young man. "How's the counseling going?" "Hard. Really hard. But good. I'm learning things about myself that I should have learned years ago." He met my eyes. "I'm learning that the way I treated you had nothing to do with you and everything to do with my own shame and fear." "What were you afraid of, son?" "Of not being good enough. Of people seeing where I really came from and judging me for it. Of admitting that everything I achieved was built on the foundation you gave me." Tears started flowing. "I was afraid that if people knew how hard you worked, how much you sacrificed, they'd expect more from me than I thought I could give." My heart ached, but not with anger. With understanding. "So instead of honoring what I gave you, you tried to erase it." "Yes. And in doing that, I nearly destroyed everything that actually mattered." We sat in silence for a moment. I could hear Mr. Peterson's lawn mower next door. He'd taken to mowing my grass too, claiming he was just being neighborly, but I'd caught him watching me through the kitchen window with appreciation in his eyes that made me feel beautiful. "How's Jennifer?" We're working on it. The counseling is helping both of us. She's learning to trust again, and I'm learning to be trustworthy." He managed a small smile. "She says I'm finally acting like the man she married." "And Olivia?" "She's incredible. Strong like her grandmother. She still calls me out when I'm being selfish, but she's also helping me become better. Last week she told me she was proud of me for the first time since all this happened. That made me smile. She's a special girl. She gets that from you. Michael reached across the table and touched my hand gently. Mama, I know I don't deserve it, but I need to ask for your forgiveness. Not because I expect you to give it, but because I need you to know that I understand what I did wrong. I looked at this man, my son, who I'd raised alone, who I'd loved fiercely, who'd hurt me deeply, who was now trying to rebuild himself from the ground up. Michael, I forgave you the day it happened. His eyes widened. But you still pressed charges. Because forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences. It means I don't carry anger in my heart. It means I want you to heal and grow. It means I believe you can be better. He broke down then, really sobbed for the first time since he was a child. I got up and put my arms around him, and for a moment, he was my little boy again, the one who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who brought me dandelions and called them flowers. I love you, son. I've always loved you. Even when I didn't like you very much. When he finally stopped crying, he pulled back and looked at me. Mama, there's something else. The community service I did, it was at the senior center, helping elderly people with their finances and benefits applications. I raised an eyebrow. Oh really? I met so many people who were being taken advantage of by their families. People like Mrs. Rodriguez, whose daughter was stealing her Social Security checks. Mr. Thompson, whose son had taken out credit cards in his name. He paused. I helped them. I used what happened to us as an example of how to get help. Good. I want to keep doing it. Even though my community service is finished, I want to volunteer there. Help other families avoid what we went through. I felt pride bloom in my chest, the first real pride I'd felt in my son in years. The doorbell rang, and I knew it was Mr. Peterson coming to take me to lunch, as had become our Tuesday tradition. Mama, Michael said as I stood to answer it, do you think maybe next Sunday I could take you to lunch? Just you and me? I want to hear about your life, about what makes you happy, about your plans. I want to know my mother, not just need things from her. I smiled, feeling attractive and desired and respected in a way I hadn't felt in years. I'd like that very much, son. Can family relationships truly heal after deep betrayal? What does forgiveness look like when it's paired with accountability? Share your thoughts below. Your stories help others who might be going through something similar. And if you want to see how this all comes full circle, stay tuned for the final chapter. 1 year later, as I stood in that same church hall decorating for my 71st birthday party, I couldn't help but smile at how different everything felt. Olivia was hanging streamers with her usual enthusiasm, but now she was 15 and had that confident spark that reminded me so much of myself at her age. She'd grown into her power over the past year, speaking up in school, defending other kids who were being bullied, carrying herself like the strong young woman I'd helped shape. Grandma, where do you want the cake table? She called out. Right in the center, baby girl. Let everyone see what we're celebrating. Michael was setting up chairs with Mr. Peterson. Yes, my Charles was very much part of the family now. At 76, he still made me feel like a desirable woman, still sent shivers down my spine when he whispered in my ear or took my hand during church services. We weren't rushing into anything, but we weren't hiding our affection either. Life's too short to pretend you don't enjoy being admired. Jennifer walked in carrying flowers she'd picked from her garden. We'd grown close over the past year, two women who'd learned that sometimes love means standing up to the people you care about. How are you feeling about today? She asked, arranging roses in a vase. Excited, I said honestly. Last year I was hoping for family unity. This year I'm celebrating family growth. The difference was remarkable. Michael had kept his word about everything. He'd continued volunteering at the senior center and had actually started a support group for families dealing with elder financial abuse. He'd repaid every cent he'd taken, plus interest. Most importantly, he'd rebuilt trust, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. "Mrs. Jenkins," called out Deacon Johnson from across the room, "you want the testimony table over here?" "Yes, perfect." That was new this year. A table where people could write down life lessons they'd learned or advice they wanted to share. It had been Olivia's idea, inspired by watching how our family had grown through crisis. Charles appeared at my side, handsome in his navy suit, carrying the guest book. "You look beautiful today," he murmured near my ear, and I felt that familiar warmth that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. "You clean up pretty well yourself," I replied, straightening his tie with deliberate slowness. Even at our age, there was something delicious about these small moments of flirtation. People began arriving early, friends, neighbors, church family. But this year, instead of whispered conversations and worried glances, there was genuine celebration in the air. Mrs. Washington brought her famous peach cobbler. Officer Martinez came in uniform, grinning as she handed me a card. "You're still my hero, Mrs. Jenkins," she said. The room filled with laughter and conversation. James had driven in from Louisiana with his wife, and they were holding court at table 6, telling stories that had everyone cracking up. "Mama," Michael appeared beside me, looking nervous. "Before everyone gets here, I wanted to give you something." He handed me a framed certificate. I put on my reading glasses and felt my breath catch. "The Martha Jenkins Fund for Elder Protection," I read aloud. "A nonprofit organization dedicated to preventing elder financial abuse through education and support services. We raised enough money through donations and the support group to make it official," he explained. "Your story has helped dozens of families already, and I wanted to make sure it could help even more." Tears blurred my vision, but they were good tears. "Son, this is. It's named after you because you showed me that real strength looks like standing up for yourself, even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when it means holding the people you love accountable." Charles squeezed my hand. Olivia bounced over to join our little circle. Jennifer smiled from across the room where she was directing the flower arrangements. "Grandma," Olivia said, "I wrote something for the testimony table, but I wanted to read it to you first." She pulled out a folded paper. "Last year, I watched my grandmother teach our whole family what respect looks like. She showed me that loving someone doesn't mean accepting bad treatment. She proved that a woman can be strong and kind at the same time. She demonstrated that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior." She looked up at me with eyes full of admiration. "Because of her, I know I never have to accept being treated badly by anyone, no matter how much I love them. Because of her, I know that forgiveness and boundaries can coexist. Because of her, I know what a powerful woman looks like." I pulled that beautiful girl into my arms, feeling the weight and wonder of generations of strength passing between us. As the party officially began, I looked around that same church hall where everything had changed a year ago. But this time, instead of dreading what might happen, I was excited to celebrate what had grown from our pain. Michael approached the microphone, not to tear me down, but to lift me up. "This time last year," he began, "I stood in this room and said terrible things to the woman who gave me everything. Today, I want to tell you all what my mother taught me, that real love requires respect, that forgiveness doesn't mean no consequences, and that sometimes the people who challenge us the most are the ones who love us best." He looked directly at me. "Mama, thank you for loving me enough to hold me accountable. Thank you for showing me that a truly powerful person uses their strength to protect, not to hurt. Thank you for being the kind of woman I hope my daughter grows up to be." The applause was thunderous, but more than that, it was genuine. As Charles took my hand and led me to the dance floor for the first song, I realized something profound. I hadn't just survived that terrible birthday. I discovered who I really was. I was Martha Jenkins, 71 years old, financially independent, deeply loved, and absolutely not to be taken advantage of by anybody. And honey, that felt better than any birthday cake could ever taste. Remember, respect isn't given because of age, it's earned through strength. And sometimes that strength means standing up for yourself when no one else will. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about real people finding their power. What life lesson from this grandmother's journey will you carry with you? Share your thoughts below. I love hearing from you. Until next time, remember. You're never too old to demand the respect you deserve. The total comes to just over $68,000, James announced. Money that Helen spent on raising you instead of saving for her own retirement. The number hit the room like a physical blow. $68,000. People started calculating in their heads what that meant for a woman working minimum wage jobs. But here's the part that really broke my heart when I found out, James continued, looking directly at Michael. 6 months ago, when Helen needed money for her heart medication, she didn't call you for help. She took a second job. Jennifer's face crumpled. She what? She's been working at the grocery store 4 nights a week, James said. Stocking shelves, cleaning floors, doing whatever they'd pay her to do. At 70 years old, she was working 2 jobs while her successful son called her a burden. The shame on Michael's face was complete now. He looked like a man who just realized he'd been kicking a wounded animal. How do you know all this? Michael asked weakly. James smiled for the first time since he'd walked in, and I felt my heart skip the way it used to when we were young and he'd flash that grin that made me forget everything else. Because I've been helping her, he said simply. Anonymously. Through the church fund. Every month for the past year. The revelation hit me like cold water. The mysterious donations that had appeared in my church account, donations I'd thought came from the general fund, had been from James. You? I whispered. I couldn't let the woman I loved struggle while I had the means to help, James said, his eyes locked on mine. Even if she didn't know it was me. But as the truth sank in, Michael finally understood why I had protected him all these years, but it was too late to take back his words. Do you think some family secrets should stay buried, or is truth always worth the pain? Let us know in the comments. And if you're as shocked as this church congregation, hit that like button because the confrontation that's about to happen will change this family forever. Michael stood there looking like a man who just watched his entire identity collapse. The successful son, the good provider, the responsible father, all of it was crumbling under the weight of truth. $68,000, he repeated slowly, like he was trying to make sense of a foreign language. Plus interest, James added quietly. If we're being completely honest about what your mother sacrificed for you. Jennifer was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. Michael, how could you not know? How could you take so much and give back so little? But it was Olivia who asked the question that cut deepest. Daddy, why did you lie to us about Grandma? Michael's legs seemed to give out. He sank into his chair, his head in his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red and wet. Because I was ashamed, he whispered. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, everyone waited for him to explain. I was ashamed that I needed help, Michael continued, his voice barely audible. I was ashamed that my mother was still taking care of me at 45 years old. I was ashamed that everyone would know I wasn't as successful as I pretended to be. I felt my heart breaking and mending at the same time. This was my little boy, the child I'd rocked to sleep every night, finally telling the truth about his pain. So instead of dealing with my shame, Michael said, tears starting to flow, I made it about you. I convinced myself that you were the problem. That you were too needy, too demanding, too much trouble. He looked up at me then, and I saw the child I used to comfort after nightmares. I told myself that asking for money was different from being a burden because I was going to pay you back. I told myself that avoiding family dinners was protecting my marriage instead of protecting my ego. Jennifer was crying now too, but her tears looked different from Michael's. His were full of shame. Hers were full of grief for what had been lost. I made you choose between helping me and having a relationship with your grandson, Michael continued. I put you in impossible situations and then blamed you when they felt impossible. The truth was pouring out of him now like water from a broken dam. When Emma asked why we never visited Grandma's house, I told her your neighborhood wasn't safe. When she wanted to invite you to her school play, I said you were too busy. When she asked why you never came to family dinners, I said you preferred to eat alone. Olivia's face went from sadness to fury. You lied to me about Grandma? I lied to everyone, Michael admitted. Including myself. James stepped closer to Michael, and I could see him deciding whether to offer comfort or judgment. Son, James said carefully, I know something about running from shame. I know what it feels like to hurt the people you love because you're afraid of facing the truth about yourself. Michael looked up at this stranger who claimed to be his father. So what's the solution? How do you fix 47 years of being wrong? You start by being honest, James said. You start by admitting what you've done and making it right. But Michael shook his head. I can't pay her back. We don't have that kind of money. We're barely keeping our heads above water as it is. That's when Jennifer spoke up, her voice steady and sure. Then we'll figure out another way. She looked at me with such fierce protection that I felt beautiful and cherished in a way I'd forgotten was possible. We'll sell the watch, Jennifer said. We'll cancel the golf lessons. We'll return whatever we can return and sell whatever we can sell. Jennifer, you don't understand, Michael started. No, you don't understand, she interrupted. This woman has been subsidizing our lifestyle while working herself into an early grave. That stops today. James nodded approvingly. That's a start. But there's something else that needs to happen. He pulled out another envelope from his jacket, this one sealed and official looking. I've been carrying this for 3 years, James said. Waiting for the right moment to give it to you. He handed the envelope to me, and I felt every eye in the room watching as I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a check. A check with more zeros than I'd seen in my entire life. That's for every year I should have been paying child support, James explained. Calculated with interest and adjusted for inflation. The amount on the check was staggering. Life-changing. Enough to cover my medical bills, fix my house, and live comfortably for the rest of my days. But what happened next would show everyone in that room that money wasn't what this story was really about. I was about to forgive him when Jennifer whispered something in my ear that changed everything again. Can understanding someone's pain excuse their hurtful actions? Where do you draw the line? Share your thoughts below. And if this family revelation has you on the edge of your seat, smash that subscribe button because what I do with this check will surprise everyone, including myself. Jennifer's whisper sent chills down my spine. Mrs. Helen, there's something else. Something I found last week that Michael doesn't know I know. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of Michael's search history. My heart sank as I read the entries. How to get power of attorney over elderly parent, signs of dementia in older adults, legal options for managing parents' finances. The betrayal cut deeper than anything he'd said or done before. My own son had been researching ways to take control of my life. He's been planning this for months, Jennifer whispered. Building a case that you're not competent to handle your own affairs. I stared at Michael, this man I'd raised, who was now looking at James's check with calculations in his eyes instead of shame. Michael, I said, my voice carrying a new edge, were you planning to have me declared incompetent? His face went 3 shades of red. Mama, that's not, I was just researching. Research for what? I demanded, standing up from my chair. Research for how to steal what little independence I have left? The crowd was getting restless again. People were standing up, trying to get closer to hear better. The energy in the room had shifted from shock to outrage. I was worried about you, Michael said weakly. You're getting older, and I thought maybe you needed help managing. Managing what? I interrupted. Managing the money you keep borrowing? Managing the bills I pay on time every month? Managing the life I've been living successfully for 70 years? James stepped closer to Michael, and there was something protective in his posture that made me feel desired and defended. Let me understand this correctly, James said, his voice dangerously quiet. You've been taking money from your mother while simultaneously planning to take control of her finances? It's not like that. Then explain what it's like, Jennifer demanded. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were setting up to steal from her legally after stealing from her morally. Michael's desperation was becoming obvious to everyone. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, he said, his voice cracking. The mortgage, the car payments, Emma's school, your medical bills. My medical bills? Jennifer's voice rose to a dangerous pitch. What medical bills? I haven't been to a doctor in 2 years because you said we couldn't afford it. Another lie exposed. Michael was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater. I meant future medical bills, he stammered. Planning ahead. Stop lying, Olivia said firmly. Just stop. She walked over to stand beside me, taking my hand in her small one. The gesture was simple but powerful, this child choosing her grandmother over her father in front of everyone. Daddy, I've been listening to you for months, Olivia said. I've heard you on the phone with your friends, bragging about your house and your car and your golf club membership. But I've also seen you practice what you were going to say to Grandma when you asked for money. Michael's face went white. You were listening to private conversations. The way you listened to Grandma's private financial struggles and decided to make them public? Olivia shot back. This child was magnificent. Watching her fight for me made me remember what it felt like to be fierce, to be worth fighting for, to be someone's priority. I heard you tell Mr. Wilson that you were thinking about moving Grandma into assisted living, Olivia continued. Not because she needs help, but because her house could be sold to pay off your debts. The gasp from the crowd was audible. Even James looked shocked. I heard you tell Mom that Grandma was getting forgetful and might need someone to help her with important decisions. But Grandma's not forgetful, Daddy. She remembers everything. Including every promise you made and broke. Michael was completely exposed now. Every manipulation, every lie, every calculated move to position himself as the victim while making me the problem, all of it was out in the open. You've been building a case against your own mother, Jennifer said, her voice full of disgust. While taking her money, you've been telling people she's incompetent. I was trying to protect. Protect who? I asked, my voice stronger than it had been all day. Protect me from my own money? Protect me from my own choices? Or protect yourself from the consequences of your own failures? James moved to stand beside me, and I felt the support of his presence like warmth from a fire. Having him there, choosing to defend me after all these years, made me feel beautiful and powerful in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. Here's what I think happened, James said, addressing the entire room. Michael got comfortable taking from his mother. It became so normal that he stopped seeing it as taking and started seeing it as his right. The psychology of it was becoming clear to everyone. And when the taking wasn't enough to solve his problems, James continued, he started planning to take everything. The house, the savings, the decision-making power, all of it. Michael's desperation finally boiled over. You have no right to judge me, he shouted at James. You weren't here. You didn't help raise me. You don't know what it's been like. You're right, James said calmly. I wasn't here. But I'm here now. And I can see exactly what kind of man my absence helped create. Would they understand her now? Or would it take even more time? What does it take for someone to truly reclaim their life? Share your thoughts below. And if this story is making you feel all kinds of emotions, hit that like button because the decision I'm about to make will shock everyone, including my own son. Jennifer stood up and walked over to me, ignoring her husband completely. When she reached out and took my other hand, the one Olivia wasn't holding, I felt surrounded by love for the first time in years. Mrs. Helen, Jennifer said, her voice steady despite her tears, I want to apologize for every dinner invitation you didn't receive because Michael said you were too busy. I want to apologize for every holiday you spent alone because he told me you preferred it that way. Her hand was warm in mine, and there was something deeply moving about this woman choosing to align herself with me instead of her husband. I want to apologize for believing his lies instead of trusting my own instincts, she continued. Because my instincts told me that something was wrong. My instincts told me that no grandmother chooses to miss her granddaughter's birthday parties. Olivia squeezed my hand tighter. Tell them about the scrapbook, Mom. Jennifer's face lit up despite her tears. For the past year, Olivia and I have been making a scrapbook of all the things we wanted to do with you. Places we wanted to take you, recipes we wanted to learn from you, stories we wanted to hear about your life. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos of a beautiful album filled with pictures of me that they'd somehow collected, along with handwritten notes and plans. We called it Adventures with Grandma, Jennifer explained. Every Saturday when we visited you, we'd add new pages. Pictures of us grocery shopping together, notes about the stories you told us, ideas for future trips. I felt my heart swelling with an emotion I couldn't name. These women had been creating a relationship with me that my son had tried to prevent. We were planning to give it to you today, Olivia added. Before Daddy ruined everything. But James stepped forward with something that looked like curiosity and hope in his eyes. May I see it? Jennifer hesitated, looking between me and this stranger who claimed to be family. It's okay, I told her. I'd like him to see what we've been building together. As Jennifer scrolled through the photos on her phone, showing James our secret friendship, I felt a warmth that reminded me of being young and desired. Here were people who saw my value, who enjoyed my company, who wanted me in their lives. This is beautiful, James said softly, looking at a picture of me teaching Olivia how to braid cornbread dough. You look happy. I was happy, I realized. Every Saturday, for 3 months, I was happy. We were all happy, Jennifer added. We were becoming a real family, the three of us. Michael had been watching this exchange in silence, and now he looked like a man watching a train wreck in slow motion. You replaced me, he said, his voice hollow. You found a new family. We didn't replace you, Jennifer corrected. We worked around you. We built the relationship you were preventing. Olivia let go of my hand and walked over to her father. For a moment, I thought she was going to comfort him. Instead, she looked him straight in the eye and asked a question that cut to the heart of everything. Daddy, when's the last time you did something nice for Grandma without asking for something in return? Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. Then opened it again. No words came out. When's the last time you called her just to check on her, not because you needed money? Silence. When's the last time you invited her to our house for dinner? More silence. When's the last time you told her you loved her without following it up with a request for help? The silence stretched so long it became uncomfortable. Michael couldn't answer because the answer was clear, he hadn't. In years, maybe decades, he hadn't treated me like someone he loved instead of someone he used. That's what I thought, Olivia said, but her voice wasn't cruel. It was sad. You turned Grandma into a bank instead of treating her like family. James was watching this exchange with something like pride in his eyes. Pride in the granddaughter he'd never met, pride in the woman who'd raised such a remarkable child. Helen, James said to me, I know I have no right to ask this after 47 years, but would you consider letting me make up for lost time? The question hung between us, loaded with history and possibility. Every person in that room was holding their breath, waiting to see what I'd say. What are you asking exactly? I replied, though my heart was already racing with possibilities I'd thought were long dead. I'm asking if you'd let me take you to dinner. Maybe a movie. Maybe just sit on your porch and talk about everything we missed. I felt a flutter of attraction that reminded me I was still a woman, still capable of being desired and cherished. James was offering me something Michael never had, his time, his attention, his genuine interest in my company. Together, they made a plan to explore the city, just the two of them, no expectations. If you were in Helen's shoes, would you give love a second chance after 47 years? Would you trust someone who hurt you that deeply? Comment below and tell us what you think. And if you're invested in this love story, hit that like button because the decision I make next will change everything.